Three candidates are running for Congress in Maine's 1st District. One of them already has the job and wants to keep it. Chellie Pingree is a Democrat seeking her 6th term in the House of Representatives, and she's with us tonight on 207. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's just start with a basic question. You've been in Congress for about a decade. Is it working the way it should?
I don't think it's working the way it should, and that's part of why the public is so discouraged. And I think it's why there's, certainly on my side of the aisle, a lot of interest in changing the leadership to Democratic, at the very least, so we can go back to being a check and balance on a president, so we can have oversight committees that, investigate the administration's environmental policies, education policies. There's plenty more we could be doing, and we're not doing it right now.
If it's not working the way it should, then presumably it needs to be changed. Why then does it make sense to send you back when you've already been there for 10 years?
Well, I think it's a reasonable question for people to ask. I think having the Democrats in control, which would mean I was in the majority party, would obviously give me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I believe in and work on policies that I care about, that I think are important to Mainers, whether it's healthcare, economic issues, environmental issues. I will say that over the 10 years I've been there, whether we've been in the majority or the minority, we focus on those things that we can get done, whether it's assistance to small businesses, the constituent work we do in our office for people around Social Security, veterans issues, communities who need, grant support for everything from a sewer to their historical society. So we feel like we work hard, we get things done, and frankly, we find a lot of people on the other side of the aisle that we can work with on some of the issues that we care about, whether it's agriculture, veterans. There are things that you can find common ground, and we do that.
A lot of voters feel that a big part of the problem in the House of Representatives is Representative Nancy Pelosi, who's been the Democratic leader for years and who has been in Congress since the 1980s. If you are reelected, and if she is reelected, would you support her to be the Democratic leader again?
It's never quite sure until after the election. This is a vote that happens once we're elected to Congress. I think Nancy Pelosi has done a great job. She's a tough leader. She knows how to counter votes. Frankly, if she hadn't been there, we wouldn't have passed the Affordable Care Act. I think we wouldn't have gotten the votes and we wouldn't move forward on that. But I'm one of those people who think, it's time for young leadership. There has to be a young leader who challenges her. So it really depends on who her opponent is. And it's not like a public election that we're having here, where you have a ballot and we already know who's on it. It's not really clear till after the election who's going to challenge her or what's going to change. So, as I say, I'm keeping my powder dry to see who there is out there.
Do you think, though, that maybe it is time for her to step aside, that it's time for fresh blood?
I think it's absolutely time for new leadership. There's no question about it. I don't want to see her replaced by an older man. If I was to vote against her, it would have to be for somebody who brought something different to the job. It's been a real source of pride to have a woman leader in the House of Representatives, first woman speaker. But I do agree, it's time that we move forward.
Under President Obama, the federal deficit expanded dramatically. Under President Trump, the federal deficit is expanding dramatically. The government continues to spend way more money than it takes in. Does that even worry you?
Absolutely, and I think particularly after the two enormous tax cuts. I mean, the reason it's grown in this administration is because of the two tax cuts that aren't very beneficial to Mainers, that were mostly for big corporations, wealthy individuals, will hurt a lot of Mainers on their deductions for property tax and state tax. So they haven't benefited us, and they've grown the deficit enormously. I'm really worried about it. I don't know what the long-term impact will be to our economy. I'm also worried that a lot of the Republicans have been saying, well, now that we're looking at these big deficits, maybe we have to take it out of Medicare and Social Security, two really critical programs to our state.
So would you favor higher taxes?
If it was done in the appropriate way, absolutely.
What's the appropriate way?
I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated thing to decide where to tax, who to tax, and how to go about doing it. And I couldn't just throw something out. But I don't think we needed to give big tax rates to corporations. I didn't vote for the tax bill. So number one, I could say we shouldn't have done what we just did that I didn't vote for.
So would you vote to basically repeal the tax cuts that were approved a year or so ago?
Pretty much, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about President Trump. This week, he called the Federal Reserve crazy and loco, which is unprecedented for a president to attack the Fed in that way. It's been reported that members of the National Security Council don't give him memos longer than 1 page in length because he won't read anything that's any longer. Had a meeting just yesterday at the Oval Office with Kanye West, which was just bizarre. Do you think Donald Trump is fit to serve as president?
I'm pretty sure he's not. I mean, I know there are people who see things about his agenda that they like. Some people think the tax cuts were great. Some people like his outspoken nature, but I think he's done tremendous damage to our reputation around the world, cozying up to, big dictators, not listening to the State Department, not negotiating on our behalf. I think the trade war that he's going through with China right now is chaotic. It's not clear what the end game is, and we already know the impact here in Maine to, businesses that are lobster dealers or deal with steel. I mean, there's a long list of impact here in Maine and no clear end game. And that's just the start. I mean, rolling back auto emissions, environmental issues, the cabinet that he's put together, who are ready to privatize education. It's just one thing after another. And he seems to do it with a lack of information.
All right, we're going to leave it there. That's the final word. Congresswoman Chellie Pingree, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.